That was the part nobody believes when I tell it out loud. Not the divorce. Not the cheating. Not even the part where his mother tried to turn my daughter's room into a nursery before the ink was dry. It's always that image that makes people stop. 7 grown adults in my former living room, waiting for ultrasound photos like they were tickets to a new life, while I carried my kids' backpacks and legal folders down the front steps. How does a marriage end like that? How does a whole family decide the wife and children are old furniture and the mistress is the upgrade? It got worse before it got better, and the twist they were all celebrating didn't land the way they thought it would. I'm 34, female, a payroll coordinator, mother of 2, and the type who keeps emergency snacks in the car and school paperwork filed by month. I'm not dramatic. I don't enjoy chaos. For most of my marriage, I was the one smoothing things over, remembering birthdays, buying the gifts his family signed their names on, making sure my husband looked more responsible than he really was. My ex came from a family that moved like a pack. His mother called it loyalty. I called it crowd control with casseroles. If one person had an opinion, all of them suddenly had the same opinion by dinner. His father grumbled, his mother commanded, his 2 brothers hovered, his 2 sisters carried gossip like oxygen, and his grandmother sat in the corner saying cruel things so softly people acted like they were jokes. At first, I thought being close to family was a good thing. Then I realized their version of close meant no boundaries. If we had an argument, his mother knew by breakfast. If I said no to a holiday plan, I got 3 separate calls asking why I was keeping him away. When I had our second child, I was still sore and exhausted, and his sister let herself into my house to tell me I was holding the baby wrong. I stayed polite for years because I wanted peace for my kids. Then my husband started changing in ways that were too neat to be random. He got protective of his phone. He started taking long inventory trips for his father's business, even though he never used to handle inventory. He suddenly cared about cologne. He suddenly cared about gym shirts that had never seen a gym. He came home late with excuses that sounded rehearsed. When I asked questions, he acted insulted. You think I'm out doing something? He asked one night, standing in the kitchen with that fake offended face. I'm working. I looked at the takeout bag in his hand. At 10:30? He shrugged. You know how my father is. That part was believable, which is what made it useful. The first real crack came from his family, not him. His mother had started making weird little comments about fresh starts and men who need understanding instead of pressure. His older sister asked me, out of nowhere, whether I'd ever considered a bigger apartment closer to your side of town. His grandmother looked at my son during Sunday dinner and said, at least one child got his father's eyes. That'll matter later. I remember putting my fork down and thinking, matter for what? A week later, I found out. We had a shared tablet the kids used for games. My husband had linked one of his email accounts to it a year before and forgotten about it. I wasn't snooping. I was trying to download a school form when a notification popped up on the screen. Friday 2 p.m. ultrasound confirmed. Don't tell her yet. Asterisk, asterisk. I stared at it too long, like maybe the sentence would rearrange itself into something else. Then another message loaded underneath from his sister. Mother says after the scan, we can finally move things around. Baby deserves space. Asterisk, asterisk. Baby deserves space. I opened the thread with my hands going cold. It wasn't just his sisters. It was his mother, father, both brothers, grandmother, and him. 7 of them, all discussing appointment times, nursery ideas, whether it's finally a boy, and how I was dragging out the inevitable. One message from his mother hit harder than the rest. She'll leave once she understands there's no fixing this. Take the kids if she wants, but the house needs to stay stable for him. Asterisk, asterisk. For him. Not for our children. Not for the marriage. Not for the person who had built that house into a home while they showed up empty-handed and left with leftovers. For him. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the tablet. I took screenshots. Every page. Every mensaje. Then I forwarded everything to an email account he didn't know I had. When he got home that night, I had the tablet on the table between us. He saw it and stopped in the doorway. I said, "Who's pregnant?" He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't even try. He just sat down slow, rubbed both hands over his face, and said, "I was going to tell you when I knew for sure." That's not an answer. He looked up at me like I was making this hard. "Someone I've been seeing." I let the silence sit there until he got uncomfortable. Then I asked, "How long?" He looked away. "A while." "How long?" "About a year." A year. Not one stupid night. Not a short collapse. A parallel life. "And your whole family knows." He exhaled. "They found out." "No. They participated." He had the nerve to say, "You're overreacting." That sentence bought him the most expensive divorce of his life. I asked him if he was leaving. He said he didn't know. I asked if he wanted the marriage. He said, "I want to do what causes the least damage." I actually laughed at that, just once, because it was such a ridiculous thing to say after detonating the house. "The least damage?" I said. "You brought an audience." He got irritated then, like my anger was messing up his script. "I didn't plan it this way." I pointed at the tablet. "Your mother planned the nursery." 2 hours later, she arrived with one of his sisters to talk.
Isolda veschaddedor.
Instead, I let them in because a part of me still thought grown people, faced with what they'd done, would feel shame. They did not. His mother sat at my kitchen table and folded her hands like she was at church. "This is painful for everyone." I said, "Leave." She continued as if I hadn't spoken. "But dragging out pain is selfish."
The children need calm.
He needs clarity. And if there is a baby involved, I cut in. There are already children involved. She looked at me with that flat expression she saved for moments when she wanted to remind me I was never fully accepted. "You're still young enough to rebuild." His sister added, "It might be easier if you just take the kids and stay with your cousin for a bit."
Isterdat her.
"You mean leave my house because your brother got his mistress pregnant?" "It's his house too," she said. "That's the problem," I told her. "It won't be for long." The next week was ugly in 100 small ways. He moved into the guest room and acted like that made him honorable. He took personal calls outside and then came back irritated. His mother started texting him so often that his phone buzzed on the counter like an angry insect. His sister sent links to 2-bedroom rentals. One of his brothers showed up with boxes and said, "Just trying to help the transition." I told him, "Put one more cardboard box in my hallway and I'll put it on the lawn." What finally pushed me out was not fear. It was calculation. My lawyer, a woman who had clearly seen every form of nonsense men and their families could produce, told me 2 important things in our first meeting. First, do not sign anything your husband writes up at home. Second, the affair itself may not decide custody, but hidden money, unstable housing, lying on financial disclosures, and third parties interfering with the children? Judges care about that. I handed her the screenshots. She read quietly for 5 minutes, then looked up and said, "Good.
Keep everything."
I asked if leaving the house would ruin my position. She said, "Not automatically. It depends on timing, documentation, and whether the children's routine stays stable. If the environment becomes hostile, you protect the kids first and file fast." That was what I needed.
Not permission.
Clarity. So I made a plan. I found a short-term rental 10 minutes from the kids' school. I moved school records, birth certificates, medical cards, tax returns, bank statements, and every screenshot into a locked file box. I packed clothes, medication, homework, chargers, favorite blankets, and the coffee maker because I had already suffered enough. I told my kids we were staying somewhere quieter for a while. My daughter asked, "Is Dad coming later?" I said, "Not tonight." That was the hardest sentence of the whole year. The title moment people get stuck on happened 2 days after I moved out. I came back with my brother to pick up the kids' bunk bed, winter coats, and my work laptop. Through the front window, I could see his family in the living room. All 7 of them. His mother had snacks out. His father sat in my chair. His sisters were smiling at a phone propped on the coffee table. His grandmother had one of my throw pillows closed behind her back like she lived there. They were waiting for the mistress's ultrasound. Waiting. Like my children had just been cleared out of the way for a scheduled replacement. His mother opened the door before I knocked. She looked annoyed to see me. You should have called first.
Step past her.
I'm getting my children's furniture. Her younger daughter gave me this smug little smile and said, today's probably not the best day. I looked at the phone on the table. No, I think it's perfect. My ex came down the stairs and said, don't start. I almost admired the confidence. He had betrayed me, pushed me out, let his family stage a fertility watch party in the house where our children still had drawings taped to the fridge, and he still thought I was the one starting things. I said very evenly, you have until Monday to return the rest of the joint account transfer or my attorney files for emergency financial restraints. His father stood up.
Watch your tone.
I turned to him. Watch your bookkeeping. That shut him up faster than I expected. See, I had done payroll and vendor entries for the family business for 3 years when they were between office people. I had access then.
Lawful access.
I knew how sloppy they were when they thought family labor meant silence. I knew the business card charges that magically became client development. I knew which fuel receipts matched his mistress's city, not delivery routes. I knew which reimbursements were fake, which cash withdrawals lined up with hotel stays, and which college savings transfer had been quietly drained and moved through 2 accounts before landing in his personal checking. I hadn't mentioned any of that yet, but I had copies. His mother narrowed her eyes. Are you threatening us? No, I said.
I'm informing you.
The phone on the table rang. One of the sisters lunged for it, and suddenly all of them were crowding around the screen while my brother carried bed slats down the hall. I stood there for half a second and watched it. 7 adults smiling like this was the beginning of their victory. Then I went upstairs, took down my kids' photos, and kept moving. That same week, my lawyer filed for divorce, temporary custody, child support, use of marital funds review, and an order prohibiting either side from involving third parties in school or medical decisions without agreement. My husband had already made the mistake of draining most of the joint checking account. He had also made the even dumber mistake of submitting a financial affidavit that did not include several streams of money his family business paid him. My lawyer said, he's either careless or arrogant. I said, both. Temporary orders came first. Until then, he kept acting like the kids would just drift back into his mother's orbit if he waited long enough. Instead, the judge looked at the school calendar, the distance to the rental, my work schedule, his missing documentation, and the family messages. I was awarded temporary primary physical custody. He got parenting time on alternating weekends and 1 dinner visit during the week. Neither parent was allowed to let family members interfere with exchanges, school access, or medical decisions. His mother took that personally. 3 days later, the school called me because someone had emailed claiming there had been a change in residential parent authority and the children could be released to their aunt. It was his sister. The school secretary, who deserves a holiday card every year for the rest of her life, told them no court order, no release. Then she forwarded the email to me. My lawyer smiled when she saw it. Contempt gets easier when people document themselves. The dirty tricks picked up after that. My ex told the kids that our rental was just temporary until mom calmed down. His mother sent my daughter a glittery card that said, families grow in surprising ways, with a baby sticker inside. His brother parked outside my rental twice in 1 week by coincidence. One of the sisters posted a vague quote online about women who block blessings out of bitterness. And then my ex sent me a proposed settlement he had clearly not run by a real lawyer. It gave him the house, lowered his income on paper, waived my claim to dissipation of marital assets, and suggested we split custody equally immediately, even though he had already missed 2 dinner visits because the mistress needed him. I sent it to my lawyer. She called me laughing. Did he really write to keep things civil? He did. Good, she said. Nothing says civil like attempted fraud in 12-point font. Discovery was where the whole thing started collapsing. Once formal requests went out, he had to produce statements, tax records, loan information, business income, reimbursement logs, and communication about certain transfers. His father fought the subpoena for business records. His mother started calling mutual friends, trying to paint me as unstable. One of his brothers told my ex I was just trying to humiliate the family. No, they had done that themselves. I was just refusing to wear the blame. The biggest financial bomb dropped when the forensic review tied multiple business development charges to the Mistress's apartment complex, prenatal boutique purchases, hotel stays, and a car payment made during our marriage. There was also the college fund transfer. That one mattered most to me. It wasn't just cheating money. It was money taken from our children. When confronted through counsel, my ex tried to say some of the expenses were loans and some were mistakes. My lawyer's response was beautiful. She wrote, "A mistake is a duplicated utility payment. A pattern of concealed spending on an extramarital partner during a marriage while draining joint funds and underreporting income is not a mistake." Asterisk asterisk. That letter bought me sleep. Then came mediation. If you've never sat across from a man who destroyed his own house and still thinks he deserves a discount for admitting part of it, you're missing a very specific kind of irritation. My ex opened with, "I don't want the kids used as leverage." I said, "Then you should stop handing them to your mother like props."
He leaned back.
"They love my family. They're afraid to say no to your family." He didn't like that because it was true. His attorney, who looked tired in the soul, tried to redirect to numbers. We went through house equity, support calculations, retirement, reimbursements, and the missing funds. Every time the conversation tightened, my ex circled back to fairness. Fairness. That word was doing hard labor for a man who had moved marital money into his affair. At one point, he actually said, "I already lost my marriage." I looked at him and answered, "You traded it in." Mediation failed because he would not admit his real income and would not stop treating the house like a prize his mother had won for him. After that, his family got reckless. His mother showed up during one of his dinner visits and tried to take the kids to her place without telling me. My son called me from the back seat whispering, "Grandma says Dad said it's okay." It was not okay. When I arrived, his mother was on the porch acting offended. "You don't need to make a scene," she said. I said, "Bring my children outside." "Why are you acting like this?" I held up the temporary order. "Because this says you handle your parenting time.
Not your mother, not your sisters.
Not whoever is available to play happy family." His mother snapped, "You're poisoning them against us." I looked at her and said, "No, I'm limiting the dosage." That incident went into the next filing. By the time the final hearing came around, I had a binder that could have stopped a table from wobbling. Texts,
Bank records, screenshots,
school emails, missed visit logs, the fake settlement,
copies of business reimbursements,
the card his mother mailed my daughter, notes from exchanges. A timeline my lawyer said was so organized it made opposing counsel sad. The hearing itself was not dramatic in the movie sense. No one fainted. Nobody confessed in the hallway. Real court is quieter than people think. But it was brutal in the only way that counts. Facts under oath, with no mother or sister able to interrupt. My ex said he had always prioritized the children. Then he got asked why he missed scheduled parenting time for the mistress's medical appointment. He said he was supporting someone through a complicated pregnancy. My lawyer asked, "Was that before or after you transferred money out of the children's college savings?" He looked at his attorney. Wrong move. The judge noticed. Then came the financial affidavit issues. Underreported income. Undeclared reimbursements. Personal spending labeled as business. His father had to testify about company practices and looked like a man chewing nails. Opposing counsel tried to soften it by calling it an informal family business. The judge said, "Informal is not exempt from disclosure." That sentence still tastes good. The custody part mattered more to me than the money. My lawyer kept it simple. I had maintained school, medical medical care, routines, housing, and boundaries. He had inserted a new partner during the breakup, let extended family escalate conflict, misled the children, and failed to respect temporary orders. The judge did not care that his mother thought I was difficult. The judge cared that aunt emails were sent to the school, third-party transport happened against the temporary order, and the children had been exposed to adult conflict. Final orders came down a few weeks later. I got primary physical custody. He got a structured parenting schedule. Child support was calculated using a corrected income figure, not the fantasy number he tried first. I received a larger share of the house equity because of the dissipated marital funds. He was ordered to reimburse part of the drained college money through the property division. He was also ordered to contribute to my attorney's fees because of the discovery mess and incomplete disclosures. The judge did not care that he was embarrassed. I cared even less. Now here's where the twist finished the job. Remember that ultrasound his family celebrated like a coronation? The one they smiled through while I hauled my kid's bed out of the house? Months later, after my divorce was already final, the baby was born, and my ex stalled signing anything until paternity testing was done, mostly because by then even he had figured out the dates weren't adding up. That was one of the quiet clues through the whole mess. The timeline of the affair, the ultrasound due date his sisters were gossiping about, and the week he insisted he was out on a work trip had never lined up cleanly.
Detest came back.
He was not the father.
All that cruelty.
All that rushing.
All that entitlement.
My children pushed aside. My marriage treated like an obstacle. My home turned into a waiting room for a fantasy they claimed was more important than the family he already had. And the baby wasn't his. I didn't celebrate that. A child doesn't deserve to be the punchline to adults behaving badly. But I did sit in my kitchen, read the message from a mutual acquaintance, and stay very still for a minute. Then I made my kids pancakes. My ex called a week later asking if we could reset things for the sake of co-parenting. That phrase almost made me hang up. Instead I said, we can follow the order. That's the reset. He got quiet. Then he said, you always make everything so cold. I looked around my apartment. 2 lunch boxes on the counter. Homework folder by the couch. Peace finally in every room. No, I told him. I just stopped making your mess feel warm. His mother never apologized. None of them did. People like that rarely do. They rewrite. They minimize. They say things got complicated, that emotions ran high, that everyone made mistakes. But not every mistake is equal. Some people spill milk. Some people bulldoze a home and call it fate.
The house got sold.
My share helped me put a down payment on a smaller place with a fenced yard and a kitchen that doesn't carry anyone else's voice in the walls.
The kids sleep better.
My daughter stopped asking whether she was being replaced after a few months of steady routine and therapy. My son still doesn't like when phones buzz loudly on the table. We're working on that. As for my ex, he still tries to act like life simply happened to him. It didn't. He made choices. So did his family. They bet everything on arrogance, secrecy, and a pregnancy they treated like a golden ticket. They lost money, credibility, influence over my children, and whatever image they had of themselves as the real family. I lost a marriage. Then I found my spine where they thought my limits used to be. And for anyone keeping score, the last thing I removed from that house was the framed photo from our hallway. In it, my kids were little, grinning with missing teeth, and my ex was behind them pretending to hold the whole world together. He wasn't. I was. So tell me, if your ex's entire family tried to bench you and your kids for a mistress's ultrasound, what would you have done first? Cleaned out the joint account paper trail, exposed the fake family business expenses, or let grandma keep sitting on your throw pillow until the court order hit the porch? Drop it in the comments, because I know some of you have met this exact flavor of entitlement in the wild. And subscribe, because apparently some people treat marriage like a group project, and I've got more lessons from the survivor's side of that circus.